What's up, everybody? As always, like and subscribe to the YouTube channel, and thank you for the support for the YouTube channel thus far. In the last video, we talked about what I called the Apex Guarantee. Going that extra mile for your client. This one, I really wanted to talk about how I got those clients, because during COVID, right before COVID, the way to get a contract was to go through like BetaSam, Unison Global Marketplace, any of those government contracting sites. But it was really starting to slow up, and the contracting game got real shaky right before COVID. I don't know if that had anything to do with it or not. But once COVID started, the market, if you knew how to play the game, then the market opened up. If you knew that you were willing to get into the PPE game, which there was a ton of money in it at that moment, then you could do pretty well. But the thing about it that happened was a lot of people had platforms, right? And I'm talking about like people with political jobs, people with government jobs. They already had a platform, and they were able to have connections to the higher ups to land those contracts, right? So they were giving these contracts out, and like I told you in the previous videos, a lot of people got indicted because they took contracts because they knew people, even though you're not supposed to do that. It was just a lot of, I'll hook you up with this contract because I know who you are. During that time period, and then they couldn't deliver on those loads. So the people that really did the job, and I think I went on a rant about how the people that really did the job got drowned out for a little while. So the way I did it was I just went old school. I just, I called, I totally used my every resource I had and connection that I had at that time period. I called and said, hey, I got access to PPE, but I was still working through the guy next to the guy who had the masks, right? At a certain point, I'm the type of person where I don't mind splitting the pie if I know who, the connection is. Like, we're not too far off from the main connection. Like, if I got to split the pie with one other person, I'm okay with that. But once you start having like 3, 4, 5, 6, by the time it gets to you, you get a couple cents on the dollar. So I said, at a certain point, I'm not trying to work with anybody else. That's when I reached out and started. Like, it's not as easy as it sounds, but it's easy as it sounds. I started reaching out to overseas connections in terms of, linking up with businessmen and business folks in China that had access to manufacturing and all of that type of stuff. It started with a site called Alibaba. I think everybody by now knows Alibaba, but I would take the connects, and maybe this is a tip, I don't know. I think everybody does it this way. But I would take the folks that I met, right, especially if they were a good vendor for the product, I will put them in my personal network. So you make friends with you do what you need to do to transact on the website, right? But I would still keep them close in my regular, role of resources if I needed it. So that way you don't have to pay that fee, and you can, and you have the connection overseas. So I cut out the middleman. That's more or less the moral of the story. I cut out that middleman, and I became one off from who was supplying getting the supply from. That brought my expenses way down. It made it so that I was eating the bulk of what would be coming in from a client. All right, now that solves that problem. That's one problem solved. You become the main distributor from the manufacturer. That's one problem solved. But you still had to find an end user. So I used all my resources. I called everybody. It was really old school. I don't want to say cold calling in the sense of, hi, my name is Fred, I'm selling, Amway. It was more like I would call people, let them know that I had access to these resources. The the fishing rods is in the water. One night I was in here, and it was tough. One night I was in here, and the phone rings, and it's maybe about 8, 9 o'clock at night, and it was a major university. And they said, we're trying to open the school back up. Are you able to supply all of these things? And it was unexpected. It was expected, but it wasn't expected, because you never know when it's going to come through. But if you plant the seeds, it's always going to, something's always going to grow through, whether it's a weed or whether it is a flower. If you plant the seeds, something's going to grow through eventually. So when I got the call and I said, yes, I can do, they asked me to supply them with, it was a lot. It was a lot of PPE. And I said I could. I hung up the phone, immediately called, because it was 8 or 9 o'clock here. I waited till about maybe 11, 12-ish East Coast time, and then called China and let them know what I was trying to do. At that point, the following day, I sent them the deposit to get the order started. At that point, I had to figure out who was going to be my freight contact to get the freight from China to the United States. Now, they offer you a service on Alibaba where I think they'll help you with transit, but it's going to charge you. They're going to charge you for helping you do that. If you're watching this channel, 9 times out of 10, you're into logistics. So we're logistics people. I just said, all right, you know what? I'll go get my own. I had a forwarder, right? I used one freight forwarder that did boats. I had another one that did planes. But the trucks I did myself, because I had a bunch of my friends that had trucks, and I just utilized them. That's what having that truck driving background did. So once we set up our supply chain, and I used everything that I've spoke on in previous videos, everything that I was speaking on during that time period last year when we were first, getting Contract Fortune started. All of those techniques apply to this, but now instead of applying it in the government contracting realm, you're applying it to the private sector. At that time period, people were spending large amounts of money. Your word is your bond. Once the door opened and people found out that I truly knew how to do, set up a supply chain, and I knew logistics, the doors kind of came open, right? Now, that's not to say that you don't have to go out here and fish again, because you're always fishing. As a business owner, you're always fishing. But the doors open more because people knew that you knew how to do the job and you could get the supplies that they needed in the middle of a pandemic to get businesses back open. I'll never tell anybody what they can't do. I'll never tell anybody what is not possible. But the dedication and the commitment to whatever it is that you believe in is what will determine if you're going to succeed. Do you know the outcome? No. If you knew the outcome, you'd be the higher power. You have to trust in what it is that you're doing. And I don't want to use the cliche statement, trust the process, but it really is what that is. You have to trust what it is that you're doing. You got to know that you can keep your word when it comes time to do whatever the job or service is that you're going to offer. If you believe in those things, and you believe in what it is that you're doing, then you will make progress. You will make progress and pressure bust pipes always. So again, I went back to the old school form of cold calling, not in the conventional sense, but in the sense of just reaching out to people that I knew were in the medical field, and it paid off. So now, this is what I'll say to an entrepreneur who, if you want to do PPE, there's always a place for PPE, but that heavy, quick hit market that kind of is slowing down. It looks like it's slowing down. Don't look for the quick hit. Don't look for what everybody is doing. I'm going to say this probably repetitively over the course of all my videos. Don't do what everybody else is doing. You need to do what you feel passionate about. You need to do what in your heart. Now, if you feel passionate about a product or service or, whatever the business ideas that you have, if you feel like there's a market for it, chase it. And you got to commit to it. You got to have full belief that when you jump off the cliff that the parachute is going to open. You have to believe that at all times. There's moments where I waver, not in my faith. I never lose my faith, but I waver like, when is it going to happen? But I never doubt that the parachute is going to open. Now, back to what I was saying about picking your own lane of travel. Don't go where everybody else is. When you go somewhere where everybody else is and everybody's making money at, sure, make an investment if you can. But at some point, I feel like in my experience in seeing this, the bubble's always gonna pop. There's always gonna be it's gonna be too many people and the balcony of cave, for lack of better words. It'll be too many people at one spot and it won't work. So when you look for your opportunity, you gotta look for the opportunity that, if you see a few people there, that's cool. But you don't want to go somewhere where it's already going, and it's you want to have your own lane. Having your own lane and carving your own niche will make you indispensable to the world. If you follow what I'm saying, if that makes sense. But I think that was just a quick story on how I got the client and the clients that we started to get, because I told people all I needed was one client. At the level of what they were paying at that time period for somebody to do the job, all I needed was one client. And I kept telling folks that I only need one. And I found that one, and that one opened the door to all of it, because at that point I proved that I've proven it over and over again, but whatever. I know what it is. I know my shit, and I know how to make this happen. And once you have shown that and people trust your words, especially in the middle of a pandemic, you're indispensable. You're an indispensable asset to anyone. So I tell all my logistics people, expand beyond that truck. If you don't have any desire, and who am I? If you don't have any desire to expand beyond the truck, don't expand beyond the truck. If the trucks are where your heart is, then stay there. But if you really are trying to get into it, and I'm going to say this too, real quick. There's a guy named Aristotle Onassis, right? He was a shipping magnate. I highly recommend, if you have desires to expand what it is that you're doing logistically, that you check out his story. It didn't start in trucks, but to where he took it in terms of shipping is where I would like to take it at some point. I think, I don't know. I'll never tell myself what I can't do. That's a big one, though. That's a big hill to climb. But, stay true to what it is that you're doing. Find a spot where it's not too many people already eating to stake your claim. And don't be afraid to, reach into your resources, but also always keep your word. And if you keep your word, it will always speak for you. From each job to the next job, to the next job, to the next job. So as always, like and subscribe to the channel. Thank you for the support, and we'll chop it up again. I'll talk to you later.